I still hear the screams in my dreams, the kind that make your blood freeze and your heart stop. It was supposed to be a fun night hunt in Algonquin, but it turned into a nightmare I'll never forget. Algonquin Provincial Park is a hunter's paradise. Dense forests stretching endlessly, shimmering lakes reflecting the moon, and wildlife so plentiful you can't walk 10 steps without spotting a deer. That's why James, Hunter, and I picked it for our night hunt. The full moon bathed the trees in a ghostly silver glow, and the air bit at our skin with a crisp, cold edge. We were buzzing with adrenaline, rifles slung over our shoulders, ready for the thrill. James, the reckless one, was already cracking jokes about bagging a trophy buck. Hunter, the seasoned pro who knew every inch of this park, led the way with quiet confidence. I was cautious but couldn't resist the pull of the chase. We'd barely gone a mile when the forest went dead silent. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just an oppressive stillness that pressed against my chest. Then came the growl, low and guttural, vibrating through the trees like it was coming from everywhere at once. James laughed, brushing it off as a bear, but Hunter's face tightened. He'd hunted here for years, and that sound wasn't right. Curiosity dragged us forward. We found tracks, huge, clawed imprints sunk deep into the frozen earth, too big for any animal we knew. They led us to a clearing, and that's when we saw it, a deer or what was left of it. Its body was shredded, guts strewn across the snow like a sick painting. The stench hit me like a punch, rotting meat and something sour I couldn't place. No bite marks, no signs of a bear or wolf. It was like something had torn it apart with bare hands, something wrong. James, always too brave for his own good, volunteered to scout ahead. Hunter and I stayed behind, staring at the carnage, trying to make sense of it. Minutes ticked by, too many. We shouted his name, our voices swallowed by the trees. Nothing. My gut twisted. Hunter wanted to split up, but I grabbed his arm. "We stick together," I hissed. Then James screamed, a raw, terrified wail that ripped through the night. We found him slumped against a pine, eyes wild, blood dripping from a gash on his arm. His clothes hung in tatters. He was babbling, words tripping over each other. It was tall, shadowy, eyes like fire, he stammered. It came at me, I barely got away. His fear was contagious, sinking into my bones. Whatever he'd seen, it wasn't a bear. We had to leave. But when we turned back, the trail was gone. The landmarks Hunter swore by, tall oak by the creek, split boulder near the ridge, had vanished. The forest felt alive, shifting around us, trapping us in its grip. Panic clawed at my throat, but I kept moving, dragging James along while Hunter scanned the dark. That's when the lights started, flickering orbs, blue and green, darting between the trees just out of reach. Whispers slithered through the air, too faint to catch but sharp enough to prickle my skin. Something was watching us. I could feel its gaze, heavy and hungry, boring into my back. Hunter froze. "You hear that?" he whispered. I did, crunching steps, slow and deliberate, closing in. Then it stepped into the moonlight, a towering thing, skeletal and gaunt, skin stretched tight over jagged bones. Its eyes glowed like dying embers, and its mouth split wide, bristling with needle-sharp teeth. A Wendigo. I'd heard the stories, cannibal spirits haunting the Canadian wilds, but this was no campfire tale. It was real and it was here. We fired our rifles, the shots cracking through the silence, but the bullets sailed through it like smoke. It roared, a sound that shook the ground, and charged. We bolted, splitting apart in blind terror. I heard James scream again, and when I looked back, the Wendigo had him. Its claws sank into his chest, lifting him like a rag doll. His eyes locked on mine, wide with desperation, begging for help. Then its jaws closed around his throat, and his scream drowned in a wet gurgle. Blood sprayed the snow red. Hunter grabbed my arm, yanking me away. "Run!" he yelled. We sprinted, legs burning, lungs screaming for air. The ranger station, Hunter remembered it was close. Safety maybe. But the Wendigo wasn't done. It flickered in and out of sight, those ember eyes glinting through the trees. It was toying with us, savoring the hunt. A faint glow ahead stopped us cold. An old cabin, weathered and leaning, but lit from within. We burst inside, slamming the door and shoving a table against it. An old man sat by a flickering fire, startled by our entrance. His face was creased like tree bark, eyes sunken deep. "You've seen it, haven't you?" he rasped. "The Wendigo." He knew. He told us it was a spirit of the forest, roused by our arrogance, our trespass. "Only one way to stop it," he said, voice steady. "A sacrifice." My stomach dropped. Hunter's face went pale. "You mean one of us?" I asked, voice cracking. The old man nodded. "It demands blood." We argued, voices rising in panic. Sacrifice? No way. But the banging started, slow, deliberate thuds against the door. The Wendigo was here. I glanced at the old man, pleading for another answer, but his eyes, they flickered, glowing like the creature's. His skin rippled, stretching, and his voice deepened into a snarl. "You're already mine." The cabin dissolved. Walls melted into trees, the fire into swirling shadows. It was a trap. The old man wasn't human. He was the Wendigo, or its puppet, luring us in. Dark shapes rose around us, faceless things with claw-tipped hands. Hunter lunged, knife flashing, but the Wendigo swatted him aside. He hit a tree with a sickening crunch and didn't move. I was alone. The Wendigo loomed over me, its stench, like decay and frost, choking the air. I was dead. I knew it. But I wouldn't make it easy. A burning log lay at my feet, spitting embers. I snatched it and swung, the flames licking its arm. It shrieked, recoiling, and I remembered, fire. The legend said fire could hurt it. Hope flared. I grabbed another log, swinging wildly, driving it back. Its screams pierced my skull as the flames caught, spreading up its bony frame. I didn't stop, piling burning branches until it was a thrashing torch. With one last howl, it collapsed, crumbling to ash that hissed in the snow. I stood there, chest heaving, the forest pressing in. The shadows still whispered, watching. I stumbled away, half dead, until I hit a road at dawn. Civilization found me, but it didn't save me. The forest clings to me, its whispers echo in my sleep, pulling me back. One day I'll return, and maybe the Wendigo will be waiting. I should have known better than to hunt at night in Yellowstone. Me, Hunter, Austin, and Noah, 4 guys who thought we owned the wild because we had rifles, a cooler full of beer, and a map of the park etched into our skulls from years of chasing elk. It was March 18th, 2025, the air crisp enough to bite your lungs, the moon a fat, pale eye glaring through the pines. We weren't supposed to be there, hunting season was long over, but that's what made it our favorite sport. The thrill of breaking rules, the rush of a kill no one else could claim. We'd done it before, slipped past rangers, bragged about it later. But that night, the forest didn't care about our bravado. It had other plans. We parked the truck off Old Faithful Road, a spot tourists swarm in summer but desolate in the dead of winter. The geyser's hiss was faint in the distance, a reminder of civilization we were leaving behind. I remember Austin cracking a joke about Bigfoot as we slung our gear over our shoulders, his laugh echoing too loud against the trees. Noah shushed him, said it'd scare the game. I just adjusted my scope and led the way, boots crunching snow, my breath fogging in front of me. The plan was simple: track an elk herd we'd scouted days before, bag one, and haul it out before dawn. The forest swallowed us fast. Pines loomed like silent giants, their branches clawing at the sky, blotting out the moon. We moved single file, rifles ready, eyes scanning for movement. About a mile in near the Firehole River, I caught the first sign. Elk tracks, fresh, pressed deep into the snow. My pulse kicked up. I signaled the guys, and we fanned out, quiet as we could manage. That's when I noticed it, The silence. No wind. No owls. Not even the river seemed to gurgle anymore. Just our breathing, sharp and uneven, cutting through the stillness. "Something's off," Noah whispered, his voice tight. He was the cautious one, always checking the wind, the tracks, the vibes. I brushed it off, told him it was just the cold messing with us. But then Austin froze, his rifle half-raised, staring into the dark. "You hear that?" he hissed. I didn't at first. Then it came, a low, guttural hum, like a diesel engine idling underground. It wasn't loud, but it vibrated in my chest, made my teeth ache. We stood there, straining to place it, when Hunter barked a laugh. Probably just a bear snoring. "Let's move." We did. But that hum didn't stop. It grew, threading through the trees, wrapping around us like a noose tightening slow. The elk tracks veered sharp, away from the river, and we followed, adrenaline pumping now. I could smell it, sweat, pine, and something sour, like wet rot. That's when we saw the clearing. It wasn't on any map I knew, a perfect circle of bare ground, snow melted away, the earth black and glistening like it had been burned. In the center, a single elk stood, head low, antlers catching the moonlight. But its eyes, they were wrong. Milky white, blind-looking, yet it stared right at us. "Take the shot," Austin urged, but my finger hesitated on the trigger. The elk didn't move, didn't blink. Then its head snapped up, and that hum exploded into a scream. Not animal, not human, something jagged and alive, tearing through the air. We stumbled back, cursing, rifle swinging wild. The elk's mouth opened, wider than it should have, splitting its skull in two, and out came this thing. A shape, dark and wet, unfolding like a spider shedding skin, all limbs and teeth and eyes that burned red. It wasn't the elk anymore. It was something the forest had birthed. "Run!" Noah yelled, and we did, bolting back toward the trees. The scream chased us, splitting into a chorus, like a dozen voices howling at once. I glanced back, stupid mistake, and saw it lurching after us, fast, its legs bending wrong, snapping branches like twigs. Austin tripped, went down hard, and I grabbed his arm, yanking him up. "Go, go, go!" I shouted, my voice raw. Hunter fired a shot, missed, the bullet whining into the dark, and that thing screeched louder, angrier. We ran blind, crashing through brush, snow flying, the hum pounding in our skulls. I don't know how long, minutes, maybe, but it felt like hours. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but stopping wasn't an option. Then Noah yelled, "The river!" We hit the firehole's bank, the water black and steaming, and I thought maybe we could lose it there, cross over by time. But when I turned, it wasn't just one anymore. Shadows moved in the trees, dozens of them, hunched, skittering, their red eyes flashing like fireflies from hell. Austin was sobbing now, mumbling prayers or curses, I couldn't tell. Hunter swung his rifle, shouting, "What the fuck are they?" I didn't have an answer. They weren't animals, weren't people, just hunger given form, spat out by a forest that hated us. We splashed into the river, the heat shocking my skin, and that's when it went wrong. Noah slipped, went under, and before I could grab him, something yanked him down. Not the current, something alive. His scream cut off, replaced by a gurgle, and the water bloomed red. "Noah!" I lunged, but Hunter dragged me back, his grip bruising. "He's gone, man, he's gone." The things were closer now, wading in, their shapes blurring in the steam. Austin fired wild, bullets plunking into the water, and one of them reared up, a mass of claws and jaws, and swiped. His arm came off clean, spinning into the river, and he collapsed, shrieking, blood spraying hot across my face. I don't remember deciding to run. My body just did it, legs pumping, Hunter beside me. We hit the far bank, scrambled up and kept going, the screams fading behind us, or so I thought. The forest twisted, paths looping, trees shifting like they were alive. I swear we passed the same gnarled pine 3 times, its branches clawing at us. Hunter was panting, muttering, "This isn't right, this isn't right," and I wanted to scream that none of it was right, but my voice was gone. Then the truck appeared. Impossible because we'd run the wrong way, but there it was, headlights dim, engine still warm. Salvation. We dove in, me at the wheel, Hunter slamming the door, and I floored it. The tires spun, caught, and we tore down the road, the hum swelling behind us like a wave. I didn't look back. Couldn't. But I felt them, those eyes, boring into us through the rear view. We hit pavement, civilization creeping in, ranger station lights, a distant diner glow, and the hum stopped. Just like that. Hunter was shaking, his rifle still clutched white-knuckled, and I kept driving, hands trembling, until we reached a gas station 50 miles out. We sat there, engine ticking, not speaking, just breathing. Alive. 2 out of 4. You'd think that's the end, right? The payoff, survival, a lesson learned. But it's not. That night didn't let me go. I see them in my dreams, those red eyes, that elk splitting open, Noah's face under the water. And sometimes, when I'm alone, I hear it, that hum, faint, burrowing into my bones. I've been back to Yellowstone since, during the day, with crowds and rangers, trying to prove it was just a freak night, a bad trip. But the clearing's gone. No tracks. No blood. Just trees and snow and silence that lies. Last week, I found something in my truck, under the seat where I never look. A tooth, long and curved, stained black, still warm to the touch. It wasn't there before. I don't know what they were, those things, or why they let us go. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they're still hunting, patient, waiting for me to step back into the wild. And the worst part? I need to know what's out there, what took my friends. Yellowstone's calling me back, and I don't know if I'll make it out again. A night in Algonquin. The forest that claimed us. I never believed in ghosts or curses until that night in Algonquin Park. Now, I can't close my eyes without seeing their faces, my friends, twisted by something ancient and hungry. My name is Lucas, and this is the story of how a hunt turned into a nightmare, one I barely survived. It was late October, the full moon casting silver streaks through the towering pines of Algonquin Provincial Park. James, Hunter, and I had been itching for this, our annual night hunt, a ritual of adrenaline and brotherhood. Algonquin's a place most know for its postcard beauty, endless forests, sparkling lakes, a haven for campers and wildlife nuts. But that night, it wasn't the Canada you'd recognize from travel brochures. It was something else, something alive, watching us from the shadows. James slung his rifle over his shoulder, grinning like a kid on Christmas. Perfect night for it, huh? Crisp air, bright moon, deer won't know what hit him. Hunter, older and wiry, adjusted his cap, his eyes scanning the tree line. Locals say the stretch is bad news. Old stories about spirits guarding the land. You hear that wind? Sounds like whispers. I smirked, brushing it off. Superstitions, man. Let's bag something big and head home. We trekked deeper, boots crunching on frost-kissed leaves. The forest was wrong from the start. Too quiet, like every living thing had fled. No owls hooted, no critters rustled. Just our breathing and the wind, low and eerie, threading through the branches like a voice we couldn't quite hear. Anyone else notice there's no game? I muttered, my flashlight beam slicing through the dark. James shrugged. They're here. Just spooked by your ugly mug. Hunter didn't laugh. He stopped, pointing at a tree. Look at that. Carved into the bark were symbols, spirals and jagged lines, weathered but deliberate. They didn't look like hiker tags or animal scratches. Something about them made my skin crawl. Kids messing around, James said, but his voice wavered. Then we heard it, a chant, faint and rhythmic, drifting through the trees. It wasn't wind or imagination. It was human, guttural, pulling us like a hook. Against every instinct screaming to turn back, curiosity won. We crept forward, rifles ready, until we reached a clearing. There they were, figures in dark cloaks, circling a fire that roared too high, too red. At the center stood a stone altar, and on it, a totem, a twisted wooden thing, its carvings glowing faintly under the flames. The air stank of smoke and something metallic, like blood. "What the hell is this?" James hissed. Before we could back off, a cultist turned, his hood slipping to reveal wild eyes. "Intruders!" he bellowed. We bolted. Branches clawed at my face as we ran, the cultist's shouts echoing behind us. My lungs burned, but then a flash lit the forest, blinding, white-hot, erupting from the altar. The ground trembled, and a roar split the night, deep and primal, shaking my bones. Something was free. The shadows twisted, stretching into shapes that weren't right, too tall, too thin, darting between trees. "Split up!" Hunter yelled. We scattered, desperation driving us apart. I stumbled through the undergrowth, heart hammering, until I found a shallow cave. I ducked inside, pressing against the damp rock, trying to silence my gasps. That's when I heard James. "Lucas, help me!" Peering out, I saw him staggering toward me, clutching his arm. Blood oozed between his fingers, dark and slick. "James, what happened?" He collapsed at the cave's mouth, his face pale. "It's inside me," he rasped, eyes wide with terror. Before I could process his words, his body jerked. A sickening crack echoed as his spine arched unnaturally. His skin rippled, stretching over bones that lengthened and twisted. His jaw unhinged, teeth sharpening, and those eyes, God, those eyes, turned black as pitch. I scrambled back, choking on a scream. The thing that used to be James lunged, claws slashing where I'd been a second before. I ran, tears streaming, my mind screaming that I'd lost him. The forest warped around me, trees leaning closer, roots snagging my boots. I don't know how long I ran before I found Hunter. He was near the clearing, hunched over a satchel one of the cultists must have dropped. "Lucas!" He waved me over, holding up a tattered journal. I figured it out. The cult was binding a spirit, a guardian of this land, cursed by some betrayal centuries ago. They lost control when we interrupted. That totem's the key. Destroy it and we might stop this. "James is gone," I choked out. "It's got him." Hunter's jaw tightened. "Then we end it. For him." We crept back to the clearing. The fire still burned, but the cultists were gone. Dead or fled, I didn't care. The totem sat on the altar, pulsing with a faint, sickly light. And there, guarding it, was the entity. It wasn't James anymore, not fully. It towered over us, a mass of shadow and bone, its form shifting. Now a skeletal figure with glowing eyes, now a snarling beast with too many limbs. The air around it buzzed, thick with rage. Hunter shoved a lighter into my hand. "I'll draw it off. Burn that damn thing." "No, wait." He was already moving, shouting, "Hey, ugly! Over here!" The entity roared and charged him, vanishing into the trees. I sprinted to the altar, grabbing the totem. It was ice cold, vibrating like it was alive. I flicked the lighter, hands shaking, and pressed the flame to the wood. It caught fast, fire licking up the carvings. A shriek tore through the night, not just from the entity, but from everywhere, like the forest itself was screaming. The ground bucked, throwing me down. The entity burst back into the clearing, its form flickering as the totem burned. It swiped at me, claws raking my arm, and pain exploded, hot and sharp. "Die, you bastard!" I yelled, holding the flaming totem high. It crumbled to ash in my hands, and with a final, mournful wail, the entity dissolved, mist curling upward, then gone. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. I lay there, gasping, until Hunter stumbled back, bloodied but breathing. "We did it," he rasped, pulling me up. Dawn was breaking as we limped out of Algonquin, the forest retreating behind us. I thought it was over. I was wrong. On the drive home, my arm started burning. I yanked up my sleeve and froze. There, etched into my skin, was a symbol, the same spiraling lines from the totem, red and raw like a fresh brand. Hunter saw it too. Lucas. Since that night, I hear it, whispers in the dark, faint but growing. The forest calling me back. I see James in my dreams, his twisted face pleading, and Hunter, who never made it home after that day. He disappeared a week later, no trace. I don't know what's happening to me. The marks spreading, inching up my arm, and with it, the hunger. Sharp, gnawing, not for food, but for something I can't name. I'm fighting it, but every night, the pull gets stronger. Algonquin's still out there, waiting. And I'm terrified that one day, I'll answer its call.